Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Roads? Well, we're going, we don't need roads.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
No, I am your father.
You're listening to After the Ending, the only film podcast where we tell you what happens after the ending of your favorite films. And now, here are your hosts, Mike Spring and Phil Edwards. Hello and welcome to episode 9 of After the Ending. I'm Mike Spring.
And I'm Phil Edwards.
How are you doing today, Phil?
I'm very well. Are you good?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for asking. I'm excited about tonight's show.
It should be a good one.
Yeah, I think we've got some fun stuff for people.
And some new stuff.
So stick around, listeners. Don't switch channels.
So you can press pause if you need the toilet, though.
That's true. We're okay with that. So before we get into our endings tonight, we do want to talk about a couple of exciting new changes to the show as well. You know, it's 9 episodes in, so it's time for a format change, right, Phil?
Exactly. Can you believe it's 9 episodes?
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's really good, and thank you to everybody who's been listening since episode 1.
We really appreciate everyone who listens and leaves us feedback and has been, helping get the show off the ground. So thank you to everybody.
You're all beautiful.
So with this episode, what we're doing is we're actually going to do away with our news and views, so to speak, section at the end of the podcast. And there's a good reason for that. There's a lot of other more timely, more up-to-date resources for film news, including, I'd like to point out, the #1 site for film news, liveforfilms.com, which is run by one Phil Edwards.
Oh, that's me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. If you want to stay up to date with the most current film news, I highly recommend checking out liveforfilms.com.
You're not wrong, Mike.
I'm usually not, but thank you for saying so. Also want to recommend a friend of the show has his own podcast, our friend Travis and his co-hosts over at a podcast called Debate Club, which is a lot of fun, where it's 3 or 4 guys, they take sort of the current pop culture news, the big topics of the day, and sort of debate the merits, good and bad, of each of those. It's a lot of fun. We really enjoy it. And
yeah, worth a listen.
Yeah, and Travis and his friends have been very supportive of our show, so we wanted to give them a little shout out, and they can sort of fill in that gap for what we're not going to be doing anymore. But wait, you ask, does that mean the podcast is only going to be half as long now?
No.
Fear not, dear listeners. We have exciting new content to take its place. Starting with this episode, we are very excited to embark on what we are calling 100 Years of Films in 100 Episodes. That's right, Phil and I are going to tackle 100 years of films from 1917 to 2017, although the 2017 episode will probably not be for a while still.
Yeah.
We are going to, each episode, we're going to break down our top 10 favorite films from a particular year of Hollywood history. So we're really excited about this. We think it's going to be a lot of fun, get a chance to talk about some films we wouldn't normally get to talk about. And
yeah, very exciting, and learn about lots of films that we've probably forgotten about or hadn't never seen. Yeah,
I think that we'll probably be able to educate each other a little bit too. I'm sure we'll have some films in our top 10s that the other one of us isn't familiar with or hasn't seen yet, or has a different opinion on.
Yeah, and it should also bring back some great memories from films and years that we'd forgotten about and want to reminisce about.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna tackle one year every week for basically the next 2 years worth of episodes, and hopefully you all will enjoy it as much as we've had fun putting it together. So far, it's just in putting together this first week's list. I know Phil and I have both had a blast.
Yeah, very good. Well, do you want to let them know what year we'll be doing so they can start thinking about it while they listen to our endings?
That's probably a good idea. Yeah. So this week we're going to tackle 1986, and the reason we picked that year is because it is the 30th anniversary of Aliens, and April 26th is Aliens Day, which is sort of a internet-wide celebration of the 30th anniversary of Aliens.
Yeah.
And so we thought this would be a good year for us to tackle this week. So you can think about that while you're listening to our endings. See if you can think of what movies are in your top 10 and see how that compares to our lists.
I'm looking forward to hearing your list.
Likewise, I'm very much looking forward to hearing yours and see what we agree on, what we disagree on. It should be interesting.
Because listeners, just in case you didn't know, neither Mike nor myself know the other persons after the ending, and also we don't know what we've picked for the other lists. So it's going to be as surprising for us as it is for you.
Exactly. And actually, that reminds me, Phil, you want to also mention a couple of other things about our format for newer listeners, right?
Yes. So basically, we both pick a couple of films, and then we decide what happens after the ending of when the film finishes. We'll run through what happens in the film. So there will be some spoilers for the films we're covering, but then we'll be talking about what happens the day after, the immediate aftermath, and then in the long term. and that's how it works.
Yep, pretty simple. We don't do films that have sequels. We don't do films based on true stories. Other than that, Phil and I just go crazy and have fun and see where the world of our favorite movies takes us.
And there's been some good ones so far, and there's been some lovely feedback from the listeners, which is all very good.
Yes, we appreciate that. Well, without any further ado then, Phil, why don't we get started?
Let's crack on. It's going to be good.
So, Phil, without any further ado then, let's get into our films and our endings. Why don't you tell the listeners what films we're talking about today?
I thought you'd never ask. We will be doing Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, and it's the first Tarantino movie that we've covered. But before that, we will be doing the cult sci-fi classic, The Last Starfighter. Do you want to take that away, Mike?
I would love to. Here we go. All right, The Last Starfighter, 1984, directed by Nick Castle. And it stars, well, mostly stars Lance Guest. It also stars Dan O'Herlihy and Robert Preston, as well as Catherine Mary Stewart. Those are pretty much the most notable names in the film.
And Dan O'Herlihy, of course, was the old man from RoboCop.
Right, exactly.
Which when I first learned that, I was flabbergasted.
Yeah, he's fantastic as Greg too, isn't he?
Always, great character.
Yeah, he's one of the best parts of the film as far as I'm concerned. So here's the story. Alex Rogan is a teenager living in a trailer park where he basically helps run the place. His only refuge from fixing old ladies' air conditioners is an arcade game on the trailer park's property called Starfighter. He becomes an expert at it, and one night he breaks the high score with the entirety of the park's residents watching and cheering him on. Honestly, they probably couldn't have been more excited if he cured cancer. I mean, this is the most excited I've ever seen people to watch a video game.
Yeah. Well, there's not much else going on in that
there really isn't.
trailer park, is there?
There really isn't. Shortly after this, a mysterious stranger picks Alex up in his car and tells him he's the creator of the game. The car then launches into space and takes Alex to the Frontier, which is a defense force against Zur and the Kodan Armada, an invading alien force, not coincidentally the same alien invading force that was in the video game. Meanwhile, Alex is replaced on Earth by a beta unit that mimics him mostly perfectly, although with a kind of sort of naivete that gets him in trouble fairly often, especially with Alex's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Back in space, Alex meets Grig, his navigator, and while they're away from the Frontier, the Kodan Armada basically destroys the Frontier in a sneak attack, leaving Alex as the Last Starfighter, hence the name of the film.
Oh, yeah, I understand it now. Subtle titles.
Yeah, clever. Clever, those guys. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the beta unit sacrifices himself by crashing his truck into an alien assassin spaceship.
I did love the alien assassin makeup, the face, with the eyes and everything. I always liked that.
Yeah, very cool looking, very kind of creepy
good special
alien.
effect, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the beta unit crashes into the alien assassin spaceship to prevent him from revealing that Alex is alive to the Kodan Armada. Alex decides reluctantly at first to stay and help, and using a sneak attack and a special weapon called the Death Blossom, Alex and Grig destroy the invaders and save the day, although Zur, who is sort of the leader of the Kodan Armada, escapes. During the celebration, the president tells Alex that they need him to train people because there's no more starfighters left, and we learn that Centauri, who is the guy that took him up into space in the first place, is still alive. I guess I should have mentioned that he died earlier on.
Oh, yeah.
Rewind a little bit, insert Centauri dies, and then come back to us.
Yeah.
Alex returns to Earth to reveal to his mom and the residents of the trailer park what he's been doing, and he convinces Maggie to come to the planet Rylos, where he's going to be stationed, we assume, with him so he can train a new generation of starfighters, and that's where the film ends. Does that about wrap it up, Phil? You think that covers it nicely?
That covers most of it pretty well, yeah.
All right.
Greetings, Starfighter.
Right.
That's what it does at the start of the game, doesn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And there's a lot of spaceship battles in there, but those are hard to describe and make sound interesting. So,
But it was one of the first films to do most of the special effects on computer. So we've got that to blame for all the CGI, if you want to blame it. But they used the Cray XMP, which I think might have been the computers that were used in Sneakers.
oh, that's
When
right.
you see them in Cosmos HQ.
You know what's interesting to me about that is when I was watching it again just the other night, I hadn't seen it in probably 20 years, and I was surprised that all of the spaceship stuff was computer generated, because when you talk about special effects and the CGI stuff comes up, Last Starfighter doesn't enter the conversation as much as a lot of other films, even though it's heavily computer generated.
Well, yeah, I think all the space scenes, aren't they?
Yeah, all of
including the flying car thing that
Right.
Centauri got. That's all CGI. But you're right, yeah, it never really comes up.
No, you hear a lot more about, well, obviously like Terminator 2 taking it to the next level, but you hear about like young Sherlock Holmes, and you hear about Tron, but Last Starfighter doesn't really come up very much, even though it's something like a half an hour's worth of footage that was all computer generated. And some of it, I mean, a lot of it looks like a video game, but unintentionally, unfortunately. But it's some of it's pretty good, actually. It works in the film, I think.
Yeah, well, I love the main ship, the Starfighter itself. I always thought that was a great design.
Yeah, I do too. Except one of the things I thought was funny was at the end of the film, when Grigg and Alex disembark from this film, and it's like 30 stories tall.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, "Sorry, only room for one." I'm like, "Room for one? You could take half of Manhattan into that ship. It's gigantic." You see them in the cockpit together. It looks a lot smaller.
Yeah. The bad guy, I always felt could have been a little bit better, but.
Yeah.
I was interested to find out that Robin Williams was offered the role, but he turned it down.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that could have given the film a whole different feel.
Yeah, for sure. Well, here's some interesting trivia that I noticed. This is what I like to call credits watch trivia, where I watch the credits and find interesting things. So 2 of the people that were in the film, in the credits, one of them was credited as Lewis's friend, and that's Alex's younger brother, who I don't think I even mentioned in my synopsis, but he has a younger brother in the film. Lewis's friend is credited as Will Wheaton.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
But he was apparently cut out of the film. And then the other interesting name I saw pop up was the hitchhiker was played by Mark Alamo, which if you are a Star Trek Deep Space Nine fan like I am, you might recognize that name as the actor who also played Gul Dukat throughout the run of the entire show.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he played the hitchhiker, whoever that was.
Wow.
I don't remember seeing him, but apparently he was in it. He's credited as the hitchhiker, and I always loved him on Deep Space Nine, so I thought it was cool to see his name pop up in the credits as well.
Deep Space Nine, I love that. That was a great Star Trek show.
Absolutely. It's probably my favorite, actually. But
yeah, I think it's because it just had the ongoing story arc as well when that kicked in.
Yep.
It made a big difference.
Great stuff. All right, so Phil, why don't you tell us what you have for the day after?
Well, the day after, we've got Alex heads back to the Star League command with Maggie. And he's going to spend the day showing around. She's going to be being blown away by seeing all these aliens and things. So it's going to be a lot for her to get used to. And then they'll be putting in plans to rebuild the League, getting the ships in, finding ways of bringing in new pilots, what have you, things like that. And with Alex's help, they'll be able to pinpoint better places to put the arcade machine if they're still going to go with that way of recruiting on Earth. And also, Lewis is going to keep practicing because he wants to be like his big brother.
Makes sense.
So that's what I've got for the day after. What about you?
Mostly the same thing, actually. But I know we're going to diverge as we go further, but I very similar. Alex and Maggie return to Rylos, where Alex is hailed as a hero. Basically, the next day, they take a tour of the city. They're shown to their quarters, which is a huge suite inside the presidential compound because, he's this hero.
Yeah.
They're given the day to recover from the whirlwind of events, but Grigg warns them that the next day they're going to have to start training. Meanwhile, Lewis starts playing the Starfighter video game 24/7. Centauri is given a huge reward for finding Alex, and he's finally achieved his dream of becoming filthy rich, so he basically retires with all his money. And we also find out that the Beta unit survived the explosion and is slowly regenerating himself.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I did like the Beta unit. He was a good character.
I thought so, and what's interesting is I thought that Lance Guest, who's a pretty solid actor in the film, but I thought his best parts were as the Beta unit. I thought he had much more of a flair for comedy than he did for the drama, so that was kind of interesting.
Well, reading up on the film as well, apparently the scenes, they only had a few scenes of the Beta unit in, but test audiences loved that, so they shot more once they'd done all the main filming.
Right.
But Lance Guest had to wear a wig for many of it because he'd cut his hair since. But,
right.
So if you're watching it and you go, and that's a bit weird, that's why he's winning.
But it almost makes sense with the character because he's like a copy, so if he has bad hair, it sort of works.
Yeah, it doesn't matter as much, does it? Yeah.
Right, exactly. All right, how about your immediate aftermath?
Okay, the immediate aftermath, I've got the Star League is on the way to recovering, and more recruits are brought in from all over the galaxy, so they're going to be meeting new races, they're going to be finding new people, and it's going to be like a breathtaking adventure. They're going to be training. It's going to be crazy, but it's going to be lots of fun. I've got Alex and Maggie. They grow closer and closer. They still often pop back to Earth because they can. They've got the ability. Alex and Greg are huge heroes, and they're treated with awe by the new recruits, but they just get down to it, and they do the training well, and they just bringing everybody together. Lewis carries on training on the arcade machine, and Centauri, he's just doing wheeling and dealing and doing all those kind of things, which is what he seemed to do anyway. I think he's always going to, even if he always wanted to be filthy rich, but I think even if he does make the money, he's still going to be wanting to have his be involved in certain ways.
Sure, sure.
What about you?
All right, well, Alex starts his training academy. Over the next few months, he and Grig start training a whole new generation of starfighters and navigators, much like you said. Alex spends every day teaching these skills that the starfighters need to defend the frontier. Unfortunately, Maggie feels neglected and starts to resent being dragged to another planet. She can't even get Earth television shows to watch, and it turns out that Rylos doesn't even have television. So she starts the world's first television studios and begins producing entertainment television for a whole new world of people.
Oh, well, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back at home, Lewis has become an expert at the Starfighter video game, and he started teaching the other residents of the trailer park how to play. Meanwhile, the beta unit has healed himself completely, and he's taken Alex's place at the trailer park, fixing all the things that need fixing, which comes pretty easily to him because, he's advanced technology and he's from outer space, so he can pretty much fix stuff without any problems. So that's where we go for now. How about your long term?
Well, long term, I've got Alex and Maggie. They end up marrying, and it's a huge celebration on Rylos and also on Earth when they return. They just grown so close. Maggie ends up training not as a starfighter, but she's back at the base as one of the main controllers. Where for when they go out flying a mission, she coordinates it. She has a flair for mission control and planning and strategy. They carry on using the arcade machines. They don't. Alex keeps saying we should tell the different governments on Earth, to say we're here, we're helping them. But they decide it's taken to the council, and it's decided not to let mankind know because humanity would probably mess it up if they did. Try and get control of it. And they just, the community, even though Alex has done so much help, they, as a whole, they don't quite trust humanity. And Alex wants to argue, but he can sort of see the point. Lewis, he keeps working hard, and while he's never good enough to be a pilot, he ends up becoming a navigator like Grig and flies many successful missions. With Alex's help, the Star League protects the Federation of Planets, and they grow bigger and bigger, but also making sure that there's no corruption and things like that. They are a force for good, and they help many invasions, some of which could have affected Earth. For example, they help killer clowns, Decepticons, Cloverfield monsters, pod people, Martians, mimics, and many more, all without Earth knowing. They save us from all these things that we've seen in many movies.
Very nice.
What about your long term?
All right. Well, so in my long term, over the next couple of years, Alex and Grig build up a starfighter army that patrols the universe and keeps peace on many worlds. Meanwhile, back on Earth, most of the trailer park residents have lost interest in the video game, but Maggie's grandmother, Granny, she has become extremely skilled, so she joins the Star Force and becomes one of their top pilots, eventually taking on the nickname Maverick, which she earns due to her refusal to bow down to authority and her proclivity for doing flybys of the command tower. Meanwhile, when Lewis turns 18, he's recruited into the Starfighter Corps, and he and Alex go on to become the leaders of the Star Force. When Zur inevitably returns to try and take over the universe, the two of them lead the Star Force to destroy him and basically defeat his entire armada in a matter of minutes. It's actually kind of a slaughter. Back on Earth, the beta unit realizes that his technological skills are the best on Earth, so he goes on to create the iPod a full 10 years before Steve Jobs does, and becomes a world-famous billionaire and tech icon.
Oh, good. I liked the BT unit going on and doing his own thing.
Yeah, I liked him.
Yeah.
Now, Maggie and Alex have broken up. Maggie's become a multimedia mogul on Rylos, and she's gone through a slew of Rylosian trophy husbands and just kind of living up this hedonistic lifestyle. But she creates the entirety of the content that fuels Rylos' entertainment. So among the hit shows she creates are The Real Housewives of Rylos, RYPD Blue, CSI Rylos, Everybody Loves Rylos, and her biggest hit, The Walking Co-Dead. So Maggie is doing all right for herself. She doesn't have a very fulfilling personal life, but she's a big multimillionaire on Rylos, creating all this entertainment television.
Oh, very good.
Eventually, Alex retires from starfighting and lets Lewis take over as the leader of the Star Force. Alex becomes president of Rylos, and he leads the universe into a new golden age of peace and prosperity. And the end.
Just the way it should be.
Yeah, exactly. So happy endings mostly for everyone.
Yeah, it was. I think both our endings were in the same feel of the film.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Definitely. It's a fun film.
Because you could go quite dark, but it's a fun film.
Right. It's definitely, it's a science fiction film that, was not afraid to have some fun. I mean, it takes itself seriously enough, but it also doesn't take itself too seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's partially why it has such a devoted fan following all these years later. People really do love this film, and I think the reason for that is because it's a pretty unique movie. There's not a lot of other films from that time period that really sort of kind of bridge the gap of the tone of serious and comedic as well as this one does.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I am surprised. There's always been talk it keeps cropping up every couple of years or so of either a remake or a sequel.
Right.
But I think the filmmakers don't want to do a remake. They don't want to see one. But I'd love to actually see a proper sequel made.
That would be very cool, especially with today's special effects.
Yeah, because I think you could do it and just carry it on from where we've been.
Oh, absolutely.
And it'd just be really good.
I mean, it's definitely one of those movies where I think coming back to it 25 years later or so isn't going to necessarily hurt it, because the stars haven't gone on to become big famous. So you could sort of pick up with, 25 years later, here's what's going on in the frontier, and it could be a really cool kind of fun adventure.
I really hope we do see it at some point.
Yeah. I'd like to see what they can do with it.
Because I did like the whole thing, because the screenwriter, Jonathan Butel, I think how you pronounce it, he was saying he got the idea because he saw a kid playing an arcade game in an arcade, and he was reading a book, The Once and Future King, all about King Arthur, and it was the two combined which sort of gave him the idea. The video game and the film was like the sword and the stone.
Right.
Taking on to greatness, and you could do the same thing again. It could be like one of those reboot sequels where it's the same carrying on, but it's just telling the same kind of story but with a different character.
Exactly. And if you want to read a sort of unofficial sequel to it, I highly recommend Ernest Cline's new book, Armada.
Oh.
He is the author of Ready Player One.
Yeah.
So Armada posits the theory that all of the entertainment and video games that feature humans fighting aliens from the past 30 years or so, including The Last Starfighter, were seeded by the U.S. government to train humans for the inevitable alien invasion that's coming.
Okay, yeah, because I like Ready Player One. I've not read Armada. I keep meaning to get
Armada's really good, and it does definitely have a very Last Starfighter vibe to it. I mean,
sounds a bit like Ender's Game as well.
Yeah, it's definitely got some influences there as well, but it's obviously a lot more kind of pop culture filled, much like Ready Player One is. But it definitely, if you like The Last Starfighter, I would definitely read Armada. I think you'll see their spiritual brethren, if you will.
Oh, brilliant. I'll have to pick that up, have a read of that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, good. Well, that's The Last Starfighter. Anything else you want to say about it before we move on to Pulp Fiction, Phil?
Just a couple of other little tidbits of facts.
Sure.
It was shot in 40 days, so quite a nice little turnaround. And I find it quite a little bit interesting. When you see the computer screens on Rylos and on the various spacecraft, the alien script that you see is basically it's Hebrew with some variations.
Really?
And I just like it when they use stuff like that.
I did not catch that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, there you go. So if you have thoughts on how you think your endings for The Last Starfighter would be, leave us a message on Facebook or Twitter. We'll share the details on that at the end of the episode. And moving on, then, let's jump into Pulp Fiction. Phil, why don't you take us through, I don't know how you're going to do this, but I am dying to find out.
Okay.
Take us through the events of Pulp Fiction.
Okay, well, Pulp Fiction, it's a little film from 1994, directed by still relatively unknown director, Quentin Tarantino. You might have heard of him.
Yeah, I think he's made a film or two since then.
It's got a few people in there you might have seen, but it's one of the small film.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Everybody knows Pulp Fiction. You know the gist, but let's bit of a rundown. We begin with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny sat in a diner and they're about to rob it, and then we cut to Jules Winfield and Vincent Vega, a couple of hitmen who are off to get a briefcase back for their boss, Marcellus Wallace. Vincent mentions he has to take Mia, Marcellus's wife, out later that week. They end up getting the case and eating a burger with the people who had the case. We then see them wearing different clothes in Marcellus's bar, where boxer Butch Coolidge is doing a deal where he will take a dive for a substantial amount of money. And then we see Vincent buying some heroin from his dealer, Lance. And this is just before he takes Mia Wallace out to a 1950s style diner, where they drink a $5 shake and have a bit of a boogie. Then back at Mia's house, she finds the heroin in Vincent's coat and snorts some thinking it's cocaine, and things do not go well for her. Vincent takes it to Lance's, who was eating some cereal before he called, and gives her an adrenaline shot to the heart. Boom, she's back. So then we cut to Butch, who has a flashback to when he was a child, and Captain Coons is delivering a watch that had been Butch's dad, and which Captain Coons he had a watch. He'd been keeping it in a very uncomfortable place.
There you go. What, like the back of a Volkswagen?
Yeah, exactly.
Little Mallrats humor for people
I love
out
a bit
there.
of Mallrats, yeah. Mallrats.
Who might not have caught that.
Yeah, no. Oh, we'll have to do Mallrats. Oh, no, he's doing a sequel to that.
Yeah, we can do our episode before he does.
Yeah, take that, Kevin Smith.
That's right.
Okay, Butch ends up double-crossing Marcellus by winning the match, and he dashes back to his motel and his girlfriend Fabienne, and it turns out she forgot the gold watch, which we found out was so important to him. He's obviously angry, so he heads back to his apartment and gets the watch. While he's there, he finds the watch, makes himself a Pop-Tart, and finds a gun. Realising that there's somebody there, he picks up the gun, he hears the toilet flush, and there's Vincent Vega, John Travolta, who's been reading a book. He looks a bit surprised as Butch shoots him dead. So then Butch has made a clean getaway, but as he's heading back to Fabienne, he bumps into Marcellus, who chases him down to a pawn shop where things go a little bit weird.
A little bit.
Yeah. Maynard and Zed, they work in the pawn shop. They take Marcellus, they tie them, Marcellus and Butch, up downstairs. They bring out the Gimp, who watches over Butch, while they take Marcellus into the next room to do unspeakable things to him. Butch ends up breaking out, trades up his weaponry in an almost video game kind of style, gets a samurai sword and rescues Marcellus. Marcellus says they're even, and Butch leaves LA. We then head back in time a bit. We're back with Vincent and Jules and the case. There was a guy hiding in the bathroom that they hadn't realised was there. He pops out, starts shooting at them, but misses with every single bullet. Jules thinks it's a miracle and starts to think about, reconsider what he's been doing with his life. They leave with Marvin, who was sort of like an informant sidekick, but Vincent accidentally shoots Marvin when they go over a bump in the car. Obviously, this covers the car with brain matter and blood, so they go to Jimmy's house for some damn fine coffee and hide the car and call Winston Wolfe. He gets there in 10 and sorts everything out. So Jules and Vincent go to the diner where Pumpkin and Honey Bunny are there, and we're back to the beginning of the film. Jules plans to retire and wander the earth like Kung Fu. Vincent goes to the loo just as Pumpkin and Honey Bunny do their thing and hold up the diner. Jules talks to them, convinces them to let them go, and they leave with the briefcase and the wallet. It's the end of the film.
There you go. Nicely done. That's very impressive, Phil. I'm impressed.
Oh, thank you. It's a complicated one to do. It's enjoyable to watch, but when you try and with all the time jumps and everything.
Yeah. Well, and to celebrate those time jumps, we're going to do our After the Endings out of order.
Yes.
Quentin Tarantino style, right?
Yes.
So we're going to start our endings for Pulp Fiction in the middle, just like Quentin Tarantino would, with the immediate aftermath, right, Phil?
That works for me.
All right. So for my immediate aftermath, I have that Butch and Fabienne settle in their new lives. Oh, by the way, I should mention, since Quentin Tarantino is one of the most meta filmmakers out there, I may have upped the meta quotient into the overdrive tonight, just so you know.
I think there could be some meta for me as well.
Okay, good. So Butch and Fabienne settle into their new lives. Butch proposes, and she says yes, and they get married. He takes the money that he won from the rigged fight and decides that he really has no real career options. He can't box anymore because his reputation is basically tainted. So he decides to enroll in college.
Okay.
Eventually, he drifts into psychology because he's seen some pretty messed up stuff, like what went on with Marcellus Wallace and the Gimp and all of that. So he drifts into psychology because he wants to help other people who are having trouble in their lives.
I think I see where this is going, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, we'll see. Meanwhile, Marcellus and Mia have reconnected, and Mia convinces Marcellus to retire from his life of crime. Marcellus starts a fashion line called Pulp Fiction, and they become very successful. Jules has decided to give up his life of crime, but then he hears about Vincent Vega getting killed by Butch. And even though Marcellus told Butch that they were clear, Jules sets out to kill Butch on his own for personal reasons as revenge for him killing Vincent. So that's where we leave my immediate aftermath for now. How about you, Phil? How's your immediate aftermath go?
I like that. Immediate aftermath then. Okay, Marcellus feels that the time in the pawn shop was a sign that his taking the briefcase back was the wrong thing to do. He'd made a deal and went back on it, and he was told at the time he made the deal that there would be repercussions, and he feels the pawn shop episode was some of the repercussions. Marcellus, he begins looking for help, and he keeps hearing a name of somebody who can help him, a certain John Constantine.
Nice.
Okay. Meanwhile, Mia, she's going to more and more auditions, and she begins to get more roles. With Butch, he ends up in New York and relaxes for the first time in a long time. He's still with Fabienne. He's living a good life. He's got some money. He's got no worries at the minute, so he's quite happy with that. Jules travels the world and tries not to be a bad man. He changes his identity quite a few times. One such time, he became a detective who helped a woman with amnesia. He ran a shop in Harlem and helped a cop who was wearing a sandwich board that said terrible things.
Nice.
But then he's currently running the Dolphin Hotel, but he keeps getting reports that room 1408 is causing problems.
Very good.
Honey Bunny, meanwhile, she gets shot in a robbery gone wrong, and Pumpkin gets out of the life of crime, and he ends up moving to Detroit and forming a band called 8 Mile Road with a guy called Spoon and a woman called Cookie. But he also ends up getting involved in drugs and things and gets hooked on heroin. And that's my immediate aftermath.
You got me on that one.
It's a film called Gridlocked.
I did see. Okay, with Tupac, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
it's a good movie.
Yeah, a very good movie, which I want to have on Blu-ray, but they haven't released it.
Yeah, it's a little. That's a little obscure, though. I'm going to say.
I know. Well, when I was writing it down as well, I had to look up the names. I couldn't remember the names, but I just didn't want to say Tupac.
Sure. I understand. All right.
But yeah.
Very nice.
So it's that.
Yeah, I like that, Phil. I like that. Very clever.
Thank you very much. Okay then, Mike, what about your long term?
All right, well, on his way to kill Butch, Jules gets into a car accident, and he wakes up in the hospital, and he's got multiple broken bones. And the doctors tell him that he's had an onset a sudden onset of brittle bone disease. When he gets out of the hospital, he follows Butch to Philadelphia, where he tries to kill him by derailing a train. But he finds out that Butch is unbreakable.
That sounds like a film.
It does, doesn't it?
What was the name of the film?
So he devotes himself to killing Butch, and he eventually succeeds by drowning him. But Butch's spirit is also unbreakable. So he returns to his life without realizing that he's actually dead. He returns to his practice as a psychologist that he's become after graduating school with a degree, where he takes on a new client, a young boy who sees dead people.
Very good. I like that. Oh, getting
Thank
in
you.
there. Yeah.
Thank you. I know I got a little fast and loose because I know that Bruce Willis's character in Unbreakable wasn't a psychologist, but yeah, whatever.
I know, but it was a Shyamalan thing going on there with a couple of his films. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, a little
Wow.
mixing it up there. All right, so Phil, how about your long term? Fill us in.
Right. Okay. I've got Mia Wallace. She ends up becoming a successful actress, and she stars in a film called Kill Bill.
Very nice.
Butch ends up spending all his money, breaks up with Fabienne, and he ends up breaking his leg in a car crash, and ends up working as a coach in a boxing gym, but he still has the watch. Marcellus employs John Constantine to get him out of the deal. John does so, but says there'll be a price to pay. And Marcellus ends up getting caught and convicted for murder, a murder which, ironically, he had nothing to do with. Honey Bunny and Spoon decide to quit drugs when Cookie overdoses. Jules, who's now called Russell Franklin, has managed to become a corporate executive. He's done a lot of night school, and he's managing okay. But he's tasked to go head to a research lab out in the middle of the ocean, and he never returns. Something to do with sharks. Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I seem to recall that there was a tragic accident with some super smart sharks out in the middle of the deep blue sea.
Yeah. I think the Punisher was there as well.
Right.
And meanwhile, the Gimp, he ends up running for president.
Sorry, I didn't even think to follow up with the Gimp.
Yeah,
I love that
so the Gimp ends up running for president and is successful. And he's got Winston Wolfe on speed dial because he has many messes which need cleaning up over time.
Oh, that makes sense. I can see that.
Jimmy still has the best damn coffee.
Of course.
So that's my long term.
Very nice.
So what about, let's zip back, let's cut back, and whatever, the technical term is, back to the day after.
Okay, well, the day after, Butch and Fabienne leave town. They relocate to Philadelphia and set themselves up with new identities. Jules goes home and spends the next few days in quiet contemplation, trying to decide what to do with his life. Marcellus Wallace returns home to Mia Wallace, and after the trauma they've both been through, they commit to rebuilding their relationship. Meanwhile, Pumpkin and Honey Bunny rush out of the restaurant after they rob it, and as they're running out into the street, Honey Bunny is hit by a bus. Now, in a weird turn of events, we find out it's the same bus driver who ran over Walter Sobchak back in episode 3 of The Big Lebowski.
What a swine.
And it turns out that bus driver is Rusty Nail, the former David Mann from Duel and Joyride.
Oh my God. It's all so obvious now.
Yeah, it all comes together. Pumpkin is distraught and falls to his knees, fires his gun into the sky and yells, "No!" before the police come and arrest him, and he goes to jail. And that's my day after.
Okay. My day after. Butch and Fabienne keep travelling. They stop off at various diners and get involved in some shenanigans with some serial killers, but they end up getting away. Jules begins to put his affairs in order. He's really committed to not being a bad person anymore. Marcellus is recovering and pondering the deal he made with a man in a black suit who seemed to smell of sulphur. Mia begins to consider getting back into acting, so she starts making contacts again, connections with that, and practicing different things. And she's off the drugs for good after the big scare she had with Vincent. Pumpkin and Honey Bunny lay low, and as Tim Roth's character was really thrown by his encounter with Jules, and he starts to decide he needs to make a change in his life. And Jimmy goes and buys some coffee, and that's my day after.
There you go. Very nice. All right. Well, hopefully that little experiment worked.
Yeah.
We took people around in a Tarantino-esque way. Hopefully it'll be enjoyable for the listeners.
I hope so.
I hope so. All right. So there you have it. That's our endings for Pulp Fiction. Phil, what else about Pulp Fiction? You got some trivia for us on that?
I certainly have.
I figured you would.
It only cost $8 million apparently to make.
That's amazing.
I know, but especially when you find out that $5 million of that was for the salaries of the actors.
Right.
So $3 million for the rest of it.
Wow.
And Bruce Willis only worked on the film for 18 days. The F word is said 265 times.
I believe that.
Yes, yeah. And the dance that we see in Jackrabbit Slims, it was copied from the dance in Fellini's 1963 classic 8.5.
Oh, cool.
Daniel Day-Lewis wanted the role of Vincent Vega, but Tarantino turned him down and stuck with John Travolta.
Wow. That takes some guts, I think, to turn down Daniel Day-Lewis for Travolta, whose career at that point was in one of its, dipping phases. That's pretty impressive.
I mean, I think I mean, John Travolta was brilliant in the role. I imagine Daniel Day-Lewis would have been, but I'm not sure whether it would have been a bit different.
I don't know
feel to it.
that Daniel Day-Lewis's performance would have fit the tone of the film, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can always imagine alternate castings, but I think, like, when I think about Vincent Vega, I think you have to sort of have that. I mean, look at the John Travolta meme that's all over Facebook and the internet these days. I don't think you would have had that with Daniel Day-Lewis in the role. No. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I think Travolta was perfect for Vincent. And one thing, you remember the bit when Butch, he's getting away from the boxing match, and he gets in the cab?
Yes.
And it's got the sexy cab driver.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently the character's called Esmeralda Villalopez, played by Angela Jones. And that character, and I think it was the same actress, appeared in a 30-minute short called Curdled from 1991. The character cleaned up after murders and made her fascinated by murder. Tarantino saw the short and really liked the character, and that's the same character in Pulp Fiction.
Wow, there you go. See?
Which was a nice little thing.
That's...
So we were getting meta with other films, and Tarantino had already done it.
Was doing the same thing, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
we were just drawing inspiration from him.
Yeah.
What I will say about Pulp Fiction, this is a film I've loved for a very long time, and I remember seeing it in theaters when it first opened and just being completely blown away by it, and not even really being sure of what to make of it because it was so different from any other films that were out at the time.
Yeah.
And revisiting it, it's nice to see that it really still truly holds up as one of the all-time great films, in my opinion.
Oh, it really does. It hasn't aged, and the performances and the actors involved. It's just it was like lightning in a bottle. He got everything right.
That's exactly it. And Tarantino's made other great films, but I don't think that any of them really just captures the magic of Pulp Fiction. You know, it's one of those, like you said, lightning in a bottle is a perfect way to describe it. It really is. I obviously can't predict what he's going to do for the rest of his movies, but to me, I think that will always be his best film.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is the best one. I think it's my favourite one.
For sure.
Because I've enjoyed all of his films.
Right.
I mean, including Death Proof. I really like Death Proof.
Yep.
Even though many people don't. But
no, I enjoyed that.
But Pulp Fiction is I think the best one.
Yeah, definitely. So, do you have any theories as to what's in the briefcase? You know, I remember when the film came out that my friends and I were all very obsessed with trying to figure out what was in the briefcase because we thought maybe we just missed it. Then, of course, you find out in later years, you know, that it wasn't meant to be anything. Did you ever have any theories or opinions?
I always liked the one. And as I was touching on after the ending, it was Marcellus's soul.
Oh yeah, right.
I always quite like that one.
Right, that's a good
one.
And
it just seemed, because I liked the way it was, you know, the light was shining, just made it a bit more fantastical, a bit different.
Yeah. I like to think that briefcase probably ended up in a giant warehouse somewhere near the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
But as Tarantino said, though, it's whatever's in the briefcase is whatever you think's in there, so it works for everyone.
Right. Well, it's definitely a throwback to the sort of, you know, the Maltese Falcon kind of, you know, the MacGuffin, that whole classic Hollywood thing where what's in the briefcase wasn't really important, you know? It was more of the vehicle to get things to happen in the film. Yeah,
but it's just nice to think. I mean, there was talk, it could have also been the diamonds from the Reservoir Dogs theft. That would have been another nice one.
Right, that's a fun one. Yeah.
But I like that. And it's so rewatchable. There's always so many things going on, and if there's a little bit you're not that fussed on, it soon gets to something else because there's so many good scenes and events going on.
Right. I will say the one thing that cracks me up watching it now, though, is the whole bit where Vincent Vega makes a big deal about $5 for a milkshake. That's milk and ice cream, right? And now I not that long ago I paid $5.50 for a milkshake at an ice cream stand.
It's crazy.
And it wasn't even that big. I was like, oh, inflation. You know?
Yeah, it's going to be $10 shake now for the really good ones.
Oh yeah, exactly. When they do the Pulp Fiction remake, it's going to have that whole dialogue scene will have to be a $20 milkshake. Otherwise, it won't make any sense.
Yeah. Oh, imagine if they did do a remake of it. Good God.
Let's not.
Let's move on.
Yes.
What do the listeners? What do you think was in the briefcase? What was your favourite moment in the film?
Right. Drop us a line on Facebook or Twitter. We'll tell you how to do that at the end of the show. We'd love to hear what you think about what could be in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. All right, Phil, so it's time to move on to some of our new segments. Before we get into our top 10 of 1986, I thought we should introduce a few of the kind of newer segments that we're going to be doing. We're sort of thought something a little palate cleanser, if you will, to bridge the gap between our endings and our top 10 every week. We're going to have some fun little segments in between.
Yeah, like a sorbet for your ears.
Right, exactly. A little sorbet for your ears. I like that. Shall we preview some of them, or should we leave people in suspense and just do tonight's new one?
Let's just do one new one, you know.
All right.
I want to keep people guessing.
All right, sounds good. So tonight we're going to introduce a short segment we like to call Hidden Gems, which you might think is talking about, you know, terrific little films that are kind of under the radar, that have escaped your attention, that we want to bring to your attention. You would be wrong. Because when we say Hidden Gems, we're spelling gems with a J, as in Gem and the Holograms, the truly, truly awful not outrageous movie that came out from Universal Studios last year that is one of the most painful film watching experiences I've ever had the misfortune to suffer through.
Luckily, I haven't seen it, so...
Right, Phil has been spared. So we're going to introduce to you Hidden Gems, which are movies that may have escaped your radar because they're so bad. Mm-hmm. So this week we have none other than...
Sharkansas Women's Prison Massacre.
That's right. You might remember we mentioned this a couple of episodes ago. Well, yeah. I was lucky enough... and I use whatever podcast version of air quotes you have around the word lucky there. I've been lucky enough to watch the film, and I'm here to report that it is not worth your time.
Can I just do the synopsis that's on IMDb?
Oh, please do.
So people know, yeah. It says, when a fracking environmental accident rips apart the Earth's crust, the resulting hole lets out prehistoric sharks from underground. The sharks target a group of women and trap them in a cabin. What? Is that real?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good
yeah.
God.
It's true. It's true.
Okay.
So basically what happens is I like also how it says that with a fracking accident, it sounds like your Battlestar Galactica speak. Like, that's a fracking accident.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, there's this underground ocean. When this fracking happens, it lets out these mutated shark-like creatures. They're not really even sharks. They're like shark-like creatures. They have these giant spikes all over them. And so they start traveling through the bayous of whatever generic southern state this film takes place in, where a work crew of women is doing work, prison work, whatever, outside. They've been driven out.
Okay, I'm with you. Yeah, one of the, like a road crew kind of thing, yeah.
Right. They've been driven out in a van to the middle of nowhere so they can dig up stumps, and they start getting attacked by these sharks. So first the sharks are kind of, swishing around through 2 feet of water and taking out these women prisoners. And then we find out they can actually burrow through the ground. So they can't even get to their van because the sharks are swimming around through the dirt between them and their van.
So like sand sharks.
They're like sand sharks, yes, exactly. And, the thing that makes the film so bad isn't just the stupidity of the sharks and the fact that they can, burrow through the ground and stuff, but it's just like the little things. Yeah. Like, so they in the intro, they bring these women out to the woods and they say, all right, the warden wants you to clear out all these stumps, from here by the end of the day. And then they cut to this 5-minute montage of these scantily clad women digging in a patch of grass where there isn't a stump for miles, and it's just an excuse to show them pouring water on themselves and stuff like that, which whatever, but just put a stump in there, just because why did you write the dialogue that you want them to clear out stumps and then you're going to have them just digging in the grass for 5 minutes? It doesn't, that's the kind of thing that actually drives me more nuts than ground burrowing sharks.
Yeah, because I don't mind a good bad movie,
right?
But there's nothing worse when it's a bad movie.
That's what this was. I mean? Yeah. It was a bad movie. And what's worse, okay, so Tracy Lords is in it. I don't expect great acting from her. But Dominique Swain is one of the lead actresses in it as well. Now, she had a career once. She was in Lolita opposite Jeremy Irons, which is not exactly a small feat. That was when she was 15. And then she went in to star on, what else did we say she was in, Phil? Do you remember?
Yes, she was in Face Off.
Right.
Of all things.
Yeah.
She was in a film called Girl and a film called Tart.
Right, right. But I remember when Tart came out, it got some critical acclaim. I mean, it got some good reviews,
Yeah.
She was like a legitimate actress for a while, and she's in this film, and boy, I don't know what happened, but watching her act is really painful.
It's crazy, isn't it? You get some actors who not a huge start, but they have a good start. I mean, being in a film like Lolita with Jeremy Irons, that's quite kind of a big deal. Yeah,
that's exactly my point. Is you had this kind of cachet built up from that. What went wrong between that and this film?
I mean, I always wonder. I mean, I know she was young. I mean, there's always the thing becoming from a child actor to an adult actor is always a hard transition.
Right.
I mean, but Kate Russell did okay.
Right. But she was a teenager at that point too. She wasn't like a kid,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, teenager. I always wonder whether it's down to the actor or whether it's like an agent or the parents or what. I mean,
I don't know, but
it's got to be something. It's always a bit sad, to be honest. But
I agree. At
least it's still working.
No, I mean, I'm glad she's working, but she certainly didn't bring anything to the film. So, if you're up late on a Saturday night and you're flipping through Netflix and you see, Sharkansas Women's Prison Massacre, oh, that sounds like it's so funny. It's really not.
It's always a shame.
Save yourself the 90 minutes. That's our hidden gem of the week. That's a film you can safely avoid. You won't be missing anything.
But we could ask, what is everybody's favourite weird shark movie. We're not talking Jaws. We're talking about all the ones like Sharktopus and Sharknado, things like that. Which is your favourite? Which one's worth a watch?
Yeah, we'd love to hear. We'd love to hear. That would be a lot of fun. There's so many of them out there. So if you've seen any good ones or bad ones or good bad ones or bad good ones or bad bad ones or good good ones, let us know.
That's a whole lot of good bad.
It sure is. I'm a little fuzzy on the whole good bad thing.
I'm confused now.
All right, so that was Hidden Gems. Hope you enjoyed it. Moving on to our other new feature that we're real excited about. This is 100 years of films in 100 episodes, and we are talking about 1986. And Phil, if I'm not mistaken, you are prepared to take our viewers back to 1986.
Yeah. In a world. Because it was all that kind of voiceover trailers.
It definitely was.
To set the scene, 1986, here's a few details just to get us in the right mindset and remind us where we are. The British Prime Minister was Maggie Thatcher, and the President was Ronald Reagan, who also did a bit of acting in his time. The UK and France had announced plans to build the Channel Tunnel. We sadly had the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, and Halley's Comet visited us.
That's right.
Out of Africa won Best Picture at the Oscars. And also Pixar Animation Studios opened in California. You may have heard of them. They've done a few good films.
Yeah, they've done all right for themselves.
Yeah. Castle in the Sky was the first film produced by Studio Ghibli, and that was released in 1986. Matt Groening created The Simpsons Family. Chernobyl blew up.
Right.
Yeah. Nintendo released the first Zelda game, Legend of Zelda in Japan.
Wow.
The Oprah Winfrey Show premiered.
Ah.
So quite a few big things.
Yeah,
there.
a lot of milestones back in 1986.
Yeah. And also we had a few births of people, including Gemma Arterton, Dane DeHaan, Teresa Palmer, Jamie Bell, Alexandra Daddario, who's great in True Detective, and she's going to be in Baywatch, Lady Gaga, Amber Heard, Robert Pattinson, and Shia LaBeouf. Oh, and Megan Fox. I didn't realise they were the same age when they did the Transformer films.
Right. Well, I just feel old now. Thanks for that, Phil.
I know, me. So do I. Also, Usain Bolt was also born in 1986. I thought he was older.
All right. Very cool.
But we also lost some people. We lost James Cagney, Cary Grant, Elsa Lanchester, the Bride of Frankenstein, Desi Arnaz, Robert Stevenson, who was the director of Mary Poppins, and Phil Lynott and Frank Herbert. Oh, Ray Milland as well. Mm-hmm. So some big names there.
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
I feel like getting Megan Fox and Shia LaBeouf doesn't make up for losing James Cagney and Cary Grant.
No, it wasn't a fair trade, was it?
It really wasn't.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? Time moves on, so they were great in their day for sure. All right, so let's tackle our top 10 then, Phil. What do you think?
Yeah, it works for me. So we're going to count down from 10 to 6, both of us, and see what we've got.
All right, so here's my 10 through 6. At number 10, we have Night of the Creeps. Are you familiar with that film?
Yes.
All right.
Good film, yeah.
So for people who don't know, that is a kind of cult classic movie directed by Fred Decker, whose bigger claim to fame was the film The Monster Squad, which is a movie that I love very dearly.
Yeah, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, Night of the Creeps was another, I think it was his follow-up film, if I'm not mistaken, and it didn't do any business at the box office whatsoever, but it is kind of a cult classic, and it's a film that I really enjoy. So that's my number 10. At number 9, we have Transformers, the movie. That would be the animated movie, not the Michael Bay movie.
You've got the touch.
There you go. Number 8, The Color of Money, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Paul Newman and Tom Cruise.
I was never that fussed with The Colour of Money. I know I should have liked it, but...
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I only watched it for the first time recently, I have to say, and I really enjoyed it. So,
yeah.
Well, there you go. That's why these lists are going to be interesting, Phil, because we're going to have some differences of opinion, I bet.
Yeah.
At number 7, we have Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, one of my favorites of the Star Trek movies.
Yeah, I like that one.
And at number 6, we have Michael Mann's Manhunter. This would be the Hannibal Lecter film that was out before Silence of the Lambs, starring Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter and William Peterson as the hero of the film, Will Graham. So that's my 10 through 6. How about you, Phil?
Okay, so my number 10 is Highlander.
Very nice.
Yeah, Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery playing an Egyptian with a Scottish accent.
No, was he a Spaniard?
Oh, yeah, Spaniard. Wasn't he something? What was he called?
He was like Ramirez. That was his name was Ramirez, wasn't it?
Yeah, Juan Sanchez Villalopez Ramirez.
There you go.
Well, he wasn't Scottish, but he had a Scottish accent.
Right.
And also introduced the world to Clancy Brown as the Kurgan.
Yep.
And I'll always love Clancy Brown.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
He's fantastic.
One of the best Lex Luthers as well in the animated series. Number 9, we've got Stand By Me.
Very good.
Which is the wonderful coming-of-age story from Stephen King. Then number 8, we've got The Mission, starring Robert De Niro and Gemini Irons, and with the beautiful soundtrack by Ennio Morricone. Mm-hmm. And 7, we've got David Lynch's Blue Velvet.
I knew that was going to pop up on your list somewhere.
Yeah, but it's all starts with a guy finding an ear and it goes to dark places. But It's
Right.
very good. And number 6 is the Fly remake starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis.
Excellent. A very good film. I will tell you that Blue Velvet does not appear on my list.
Yeah, I didn't think it would, mate.
No. Well, you know me well then.
Yeah.
I'm not really a fan of that film, to be honest with you. It's just a little too... I'm not really a giant David Lynch fan, to be fair.
Yeah.
I love Twin Peaks, but as far as his movies go, I've just never really been able to get into them.
Oh, well, some of them are hard going. I mean, and Blue Velvet, it was probably... That's when it had like... It did have like a normal, almost normal narrative for a David Lynch film.
Right, for like half the film, but then it gets weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Inland Empire, that's a real hard one to watch.
Yeah, that's a slog, for sure.
The Fly, though, I do like that remake. I think that was one of the great remakes.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Actually, I'll reveal that just missed my top 10 list.
Yeah.
But it was definitely in consideration, for sure. All right, well, a couple of films. I think we're going to know where we're going to end up in our top 5s a little bit, but we'll see where we diverge. For my number 5, I have Highlander.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
yeah.
Much like you. I put it a little higher than you. I've been a fan of that film since I first saw it. I've stuck with the franchise through thick and thin, and let's be honest, it's mostly been thin.
Oh, there's some dreadful sequels.
I've seen all the sequels. I've seen the TV show, even the animated film, which was surprisingly good. But I do have a real special place in my heart for the original Highlander, and so that's my number 5. How about you?
Well, just I always remember the one with Michael Ironside in the sequel.
That was the second one. Yeah, the terrible one.
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the one which is totally, depth charge the whole franchise, really.
Well, and then ruined the whole thing by making them aliens, and then they did a director's cut, which didn't help any.
Yeah, but I always thought Michael Ironside there, the way he acted, there's one bit where he gets shot and then gets up. I thought he would have made a brilliant Wolverine.
Oh, right, sure.
If they were doing the X-Men movies back then.
Right, for sure,
That would
definitely.
have been great, yeah.
Great choice.
So my number 5 is Platoon.
Very nice.
Yeah, classic Vietnam film. I just think it's just a brilliant movie.
Yep. Charlie Sheen, back when he was a real actor, Oliver Stone making one of his best films, I would say. And I will tell you, Platoon also just missed my cut, believe it or not.
Well, it's 1986. There's so many films.
There was a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of great films.
We'll just have to stress as well that we're not saying that these were the best movies of the year. These are our personal favorites.
Exactly.
Just before people start going, but what about this? What about that?
Right. Yep. No, these are definitely our favorite films, which sometimes means they're the best films, but sometimes might not. And like Phil, we said earlier in the episode, we don't know each other's lists ahead of time, so this is all, a surprise for us.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my number 4 was also on your list, Stand By Me.
Yes.
I'm actually a little surprised it wasn't a little higher on your list, Phil, I gotta say.
I know it's... I mean, I probably, if I did the list again in like a couple of months, it'd probably be changing a little bit, but...
Yeah, I can see that. It was definitely tough to kind of get the order right, but I do... Stand By Me is definitely going to rank as one of my all-time favorite films, and actually, I thought it was going to end up higher on my list this time around, but it was my top 3 was such a Sophie's choice that I Stand By Me just missed the top 3, but it's definitely one of my favorites. So, how about you?
My number 4 is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Very good.
Which is, well, everybody knows it. Real good, fun movie.
Yep.
And I'm glad they've never made a sequel.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Another future episode we'll definitely be doing one of these days, for sure.
Yeah, I've got some ideas for it.
Oh, good. I can't wait.
That'll be interesting. What about your number 3?
All right, well, this is where it got tricky, and I'm going to tell you, in all honesty, I changed the order of my top 3 about a dozen times before I settled on this. So you could ask me in 5 minutes, and I might still tell you a different order than this for my top 3. But my number 3 is Big Trouble in Little China.
Ooh.
John Carpenter, Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
It's a great mashup of genres: sci-fi, comedy, horror, you name it, it's in there. And I was actually surprised it didn't make my number 1, because that's how good 1986 was as a year. Big Trouble in Little China is, I know I say this a lot, that I have a lot of favorite films, but like that's one of my like desert island movies. If I could only take a handful of movies to desert island, that would be one of them. So
what I really like though is the fact that Kurt Russell thinks he's the hero and he's just not.
Right.
I just love the way that's done.
Yep.
It just works so well. He's not even the sidekick, really. He's just...
It's true. It's really John Carpenter and Kurt Russell at their best, and it is as close to a perfect movie as it gets as far as I'm concerned. So that's my number 3. How about you?
My number 3 is The Hitcher.
Interesting choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rutger Hauer and C. Thomas Howell and Jennifer Jason Leigh. I don't know what it is. It's just... I always remember seeing the trailer when I was a kid going to a video shop. Always intrigued me. It was always the cheesy voiceover, don't pick him up and all that stuff.
Right.
But when I finally did get to see it, I think I just loved the way it was shot and the way the feel was. You had these big wide shots of the desert, and there's the whole thing about what is the Hitcher? Is he actually just a man, or is he this mythic force of nature? What is he? It just stuck with me.
Sure.
And I was surprised it's so high on my list, but when I was going through everything, I was going, well, no. Yeah, they kept moving up. And
right. Yeah, I ask myself a lot, like, when I put them in order, it's like, well, which one of these would I rather watch? If I had to put one of them in tonight, which one would I put in first? And that sort of kind of helped me inform what landed where. But that's interesting. That's a good choice.
Okay, and what about, as Austin Powers would say, what about your number 2?
So my number 2, and this is a tough one to put at number 2, I'm not going to lie, was Aliens. James Cameron's Aliens was number 2.
I will say Snap. That's my number 2 as well.
Oh, was it? All right. Well, I'm curious then to see what your number 1 is, because I know it's not the same as mine. But all right, so we both picked Aliens for number 2. Aliens is one of the greatest science fiction films of all time. It's James Cameron made himself, into a superstar director with this film. And it's I remember when it came out, I didn't know what Alien was because I was pretty young. And I remember being in a bookstore and seeing the adaptation of Aliens, which I've read probably about 25 times over the years.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said, I want to see that because I love the first movie. And I said, Aliens. I said, well, what was the first movie? And he goes, Alien. And I was so struck by that. And I sort of became fascinated by this movie. So I remember, I'm dating myself, but I remember checking out Alien from the library on VHS and watching it, and of course loving it. And I didn't see Aliens in theaters because I was a little young for that. But
same here. Yeah.
When it came out on video, I just watched it over and over and over. And I've owned it in every format. I owned it on a widescreen VHS, which is not easy to get back in the day.
Oh God, no.
I had the DVD. I've had the DVD box set. I've got the Blu-ray box set, and my entire love of the entire Alien universe stems from that movie. And I know there are people who like the first one better, and that's fine because the first one is a great film. It's a very different movie.
Yeah.
But for my money, it does not get better than Aliens in that franchise.
Well, I like the fact that Alien and Aliens, I mean, it's the same universe and everything, but they are different films. And I love the fact James Cameron did that. He went off and made it bigger. Well, and a different kind of feel. It also, it's got I love films where there's people going to a place and something's happened and they don't know what, and they're investigating it, and as we are as well, we're like carried along with them.
Right.
So we didn't know what had happened on Hadley's Hope.
Right. Exactly.
And I just love the way that happens, and they do things, and that does it really well.
Yes, it does. So there you go. So Aliens, both are number 2 picks. This shall be very interesting then.
Yes.
So for my number 1 film, it's a movie that has already appeared on your list.
Okay.
It is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, okay.
As we know, I'm a big John Hughes fan.
Yeah.
This was a movie that this is a movie that I still quote 20 different lines from on a regular basis. Barely a week goes by that I don't at some point quote Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
It's a very quotable movie.
It is. I wanted to be Ferris Bueller when I was a kid. And the reason I picked it over Aliens was because, I had to look at it and say, if I could only watch one of these movies over and over and over again, which one would it be? And I've seen Ferris Bueller's a million times, and I can watch it a million more, and I never get tired of it. There's so many classic scenes in it, so much great dialogue, and so many great characters. There's Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago, and there's just so many things about that movie that I love. The whole twist and shout, like I wanted to be Ferris Bueller so bad that I memorized like twist and shout.
And wrap a hot towel around your head.
Right, just so I could sing it.
Never had one lesson. So many great lines.
Yeah, so that's my number 1. It really is just a magical film. And as much as I love Aliens, honestly, I was going to make them a tie because I had such a hard time deciding, but I don't want to do ties because I feel like that's copping out. So there you go. So Ferris Bueller edges out Aliens by the barest fraction of an inch. So, all right, Phil, I'm dying to... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's the same with me as well. My number 1 just pips Aliens to the post. It's you've already mentioned it. It's John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, there you go. I should have known.
Because it's just Kurt Russell is just brilliant in it. And when the first time I watched it, I didn't know which way it was going to go, and it just goes in a totally different direction anyway.
Yep.
And it's just wonderful. It's just his character's just so stupid, but so I don't know how to explain. He's such a great character.
He is. He really is. Jack Burton's fantastic.
Yeah. It's so well done, and there's like great effects for the time, and you're just taken into this whole other world with him.
Yeah.
And I just love the way it's done. It's a great journey. And at the end of it, he's still pretty much, Jack Burton he's still in the same kind of position he was before.
Right. He's every bit as clueless as he was.
He hasn't really learned everything. Yeah. but he's had a good time doing it.
Yeah. I think in my first draft of my list, I think I had Big Trouble at number 1, actually, and then it moved to Aliens, and then I ended up on Ferris Bueller. So, like I said, ask me tomorrow. Those three could have all changed places, but
for me, Big Trouble in Little China really shook the pillars of heaven.
There you go. So that's our top 10. Phil, did you have any other films that missed the cut that you wanted to mention?
There's so many films which just missed the cut, to be honest. There was Top Gun.
Yep.
Back to School.
Yep.
The Golden Child. I mean, some of these, they're not that great a film, but just have fun memories of watching them. Flight of the Navigator.
Yep.
The Wraith, Charlie Sheen one.
Oh, right.
Critters.
Uh-huh.
FX, Murder by Illusion. I always have a soft spot for that one.
Yeah, that's
Brian Brown.
That was really close to making my top 10, actually.
Yeah.
I left it out, but it was definitely right up there.
That was one of those ones I watched over and over again on video when the first time I saw it.
Yep.
Labyrinth always made my list, but not quite.
Labyrinth would actually not make my list. It didn't even make my just missed the cut list. It didn't even make my first draft list. I know people love that movie. I've never been a fan of it. I
can see why.
I came to it too late, I think, and I just never got into it.
What about you? Any others that missed the list?
Well, several that you mentioned. The ones that just missed it for me, Top Gun, of course, was one of them. Karate Kid Part 2, FX, all films I loved. I also included Space Camp.
Oh, yeah, Space
Camp. Which is a movie I had a real soft spot for. I watched it a lot when I was a kid, and I watched it a few years back, and it actually holds up, fairly decently.
Yeah, I think I was on TV a few weeks ago, actually.
Right, right. Also, Three Amigos with Chevy Chase and Steve Martin and Martin Short. There you go.
I always like that one. That always makes me laugh, that film.
Yeah, that's a funny one. And two sort of under-the-radar picks, Gung Ho, starring Michael Keaton.
Oh.
Where he plays an American at a car factory that gets taken over by the Japanese.
Yeah.
And
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, I watched it not that long ago. It's actually a really good film. It's Ron Howard, I believe, and I really liked it. And also Friday the 13th Part 6, because that's one of the better Friday the 13th franchise installments, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of great movies that year. Phil, why don't you tell us about the box office for that year? See how we stack up compared to the box office.
Well, we did have a few of the films in the top 10, but according to Box Office Mojo, the top 10 of the year of 1986 was number 10 was Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, Ruthless People.
Another good one.
That was the Bette Midler one, wasn't it?
Yeah, Bette Midler, Danny DeVito.
Yeah. Number 8 was The Golden Child.
Right.
Which I always watch whenever it's on TV.
Yes,
I always
love that
find
movie.
myself watching it.
Yep.
Number 7 was Aliens.
That's fascinating that was actually that low down on the list,
Yeah, but it's for like a horror film, big action horror film, I suppose, getting up there.
For an R-rated movie, especially, that is pretty good.
Yeah, it's getting up there. Number 6 was Back to School, which is the Rodney Dangerfield one, which is another one whenever it's on TV.
Right.
You just end up sitting and watching it. And then number 5, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home.
Yep.
Number 4 was Karate Kid Part 2. Number 3 was Platoon. Number 2 was Crocodile Dundee. And number 1 was Top Gun.
There you go. Well, right.
Yeah. So not too bad.
No, not bad at all. A good top 10 from both of us, I think, and also a good top 10 at the box office.
Yeah, and 1986, I mean, it was just a great year for films.
Yes.
So many good ones.
Right.
And so many ones which weren't that good, but you just loved watching. Yeah.
No, that's exactly. That is definitely from the 80s, I think, will probably lean heavy when we do, years from the 80s. There will probably be, I'm sure, a strong nostalgia factor,
Yeah.
And other years will differ, though, so it'll be interesting to see how things shape up on our lists depending on what year we're doing.
Yeah, and of course, if people out there want to let us know what they thought of our list and also what their top 10 films from 1986 are, just let us know in the various places you can leave them, and we'll be mentioning them a little bit later.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your lists as well, or at least what you thought of our lists and what you thought of this new feature. Hopefully you'll like it, because we're hoping to do it for another 99 episodes, but let us know your thoughts. We definitely want to hear from you. All right, so Phil, I think that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Why don't you tell everybody what films we'll be talking about next week? Okay, so next week we will be talking about Neil Blomkamp's District 9, starring Shelton Copley, and also we will then be covering a comedy, Bridesmaids, starring Kristen Wiig, Melissa McCarthy, Rose Byrne, and a few other familiar faces. That is quite the interesting matchup we have picked, Phil. District 9 and Bridesmaids. I think it's the perfect viewing combination. It is, have two films. It is definitely for people who are watching along at home, that is a double feature that you don't usually see. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. You're not going to see that double feature in the cinema. No, definitely not. And so since District 9 came out in 2009, we decided to do our top 10 of 2009. So you guys can go ahead and start formulating your lists and see how they compare to our lists. And we'll see if District 9 makes it onto either of our lists. It'll be a neat little tie-in for next week's episode. We'll have to see what else was out that year. That's right. It should be interesting. We'll have to turn back the Wayback Machine and see what films came out just a scant 7 years ago. 7 years? Oh, my God. I know. Can you believe it? I know. Yeah, should be fun. Should be fun. So hopefully you all will join us again in a week's time for that episode. You'll get District 9, Bridesmaids, and the top 10 films of 2009, as well as a fun little surprise feature we're going to throw in for you that we'll reveal next week.
Yeah.
Okay, so Phil, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you online?
You can find me on liveforfilms.com for all your movie news, reviews, trailers, posters, cool art, comics, bits and pieces, whatever takes my fancy. And it's also, you can always find me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, Pinterest, and whatever other social media thing is currently hot.
Local bulletin boards at supermarkets.
Yeah, I'll be hanging around, like doing, ringing a bell,
Right.
shouting out what's on.
Very good.
So where can they find you, Mike?
Well, Phil, I'm glad you asked. I'm actually in the middle of launching an exciting new project and a new website, and I'm going to reveal that next episode because I want to make sure it's 100% finished before I tell people where to go. But some exciting stuff over there. Hopefully people will like what I have to offer.
Sounds good.
And you can find us online at facebook.com/aftertheendingpodcast. That's where you can leave all your feedback, your comments for us, questions, anything like that. And now you can find us on Twitter. Phil, what's our new Twitter handle?
Our Twitter handle is, you can find us after_the ending.
There you go. After_the ending with your little @ symbol in front of it, of course. But that's us on Twitter. And we are also going to have an email address worked up for you guys really soon as well. So lots of ways to get in touch with us. We love to hear from you guys. Next week, we'll be sharing some reader feedback on some questions we've been asking. So that'll be a lot of fun as well. So check out our pages, get some answers in, get some feedback in, and maybe you'll hear your name in this very space next week.
You know it makes sense.
Yes, you sound like a propaganda war poster there. It makes sense to recycle.
Yeah, just do it.
All right, well, that's going to wrap us up for tonight. Once again, we thank you for listening. I'm Mike Spring.
And I'm Phil Edwards.
And we'll see you next week.
After the ending.
I am very well, thank you. I'm very excited about tonight's episode. That's a lot of varies at one point in time. All right, one more time. How you doing today, Phil?
All I can think of is very now.
Definitely. I sound like the girls on Saturday Night Live. Do you know the ones I'm talking about, the radio show? They're like the sweaty balls. Do you know that one?
Oh, yeah, I know them, yeah.
Definitely. And while they're away from the frontier, the Kodan Armada... Armada? What is that?
Armada?
Yeah. Jeez. To prevent the assassin from revealing to the Kodan Armada... Why do I keep saying Armada? What is that?
Armada.
What's Armada with me?
What's the matter with you? Well, yeah. No, forget it. Go on. And Lewis, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So I just want to be funny.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. I was trying to care. My drink bottle, I was drinking out of a plastic bottle. It got all crunched up, and I was trying to uncrunch it quietly instead of it going bump, 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 so I wasn't really listening.
It just went really, really quiet. Okay.
And about yeah. So we're going to start our endings for the pulp. All right, so let's take it back in time then, Phil. Tell us about your day after.
Okay. Do you need my long term now?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Whoa.
And this week, we have none other than... Phil, you want to intro it?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, go on, do that again.
Trying to include you here, buddy.
Yeah, go on.
Moving on now to the meat of the show, the other meat after our endings, I should say. That sounds weird. Let me do that again.
Yeah, so that's that. And are we?
Number 2.
Yeah, number 2. God, why do I keep losing this? I've got the list in front of me as well. Which one was that? Part 6. Is that? It's not the New York one, is it? That was that 4.
No, that's part 8. I knew
part 8.
I'm
totally confused.
I want to say it's the one with the psychic girl. Maybe. Don't ask me that.
Yeah. No. Okay.
I don't remember. I don't know that film.
It's French one.
Oh.
That's all I can remember about it. I'll leave Betty Blue out. Cut Betty Blue.
I'll do that.
Yeah.